a city the size of a small country, built of stone, fed by engineered rivers, powered a civilization that ruled Southeast Asia for 5 centuries. They carved mountains of sandstone into gods, controlled rice, water, and people. And then, almost as mysteriously as it rose, it faltered. This is the story of the Khmer, their rise, their unbeatable peak, and the collapse that still puzzles archaeologists today. In this episode, we'll trace the Khmer Empire from its birth under Jayavarman II through the age of Angkor, when the Khmer turned rice, water, and stone into power. We'll look at statecraft, religion, hydraulic engineering, climate records, LiDAR revelations, and the human stories within. And we'll ask, what really caused Angkor's decline? Before Angkor rose, the region's story begins with trading polities, Funan and Chenla, linked into Indian Ocean networks. These early states absorbed Indic religion and court culture, but remained local in shape and interest. Into that world stepped Jayavarman II, crowned in 802 CE, who proclaimed himself a divine king and founded the Khmer polity that would become the Empire of Angkor. This ritual acted as the political charter. It fused local rulers into a cosmology of kingship that legitimated large-scale mobilization of labor and resources. From then, successive kings expanded temple networks, royal capitals, and the infrastructure necessary to feed a growing population. Khmer power was ideological and hydraulic. The king's authority was expressed via the Devaraja cult, the king as god-king, and through dramatic temple construction. Temples weren't just religious centers, they were landowners, administrative hubs, and economic engines. These temple complexes anchored the state and legitimized extraction of labor and rice. Monuments like Angkor Wat and Bayon are not merely art, they're statements of control, of manpower, resources, and religious narrative. They reflect a polity able to mobilize tens of thousands of workers over generations. At the heart of Angkor's success was water. The Khmer built massive reservoirs, barays, canals, and weirs to store monsoon water and irrigate rice paddies. This hydraulic network allowed multiple rice harvests and supported a huge population, perhaps the largest pre-industrial urban population on Earth. Recent LiDAR surveys revealed the full scale of the urban landscape: grids, roads, neighborhoods, early capitals, a planned urbanism linked to the waterworks. Angkor was not a temple in the forest. It was a vast engineered metropolis reliant on precise water control. But that same dependency made Angkor vulnerable. Too much water or too little, and the system would break. Between roughly the 10th and 13th centuries, the Khmer Empire reached its apogee. Kings like Suryavarman II and Jayavarman VII launched temple programs, road networks, and diplomatic ties across Southeast Asia. Angkorers engaged in regional trade, exporting rice, forest products, and artisanal goods, while importing prestige goods and ideas. Art, sculpture, and monumental architecture matured. Jayavarman VII's Buddhist monuments, for instance, revolved around public welfare, hospitals, rest houses, and roads, reflecting a king who projected care as power. In the late 13th and 14th centuries, something changed. Tree ring and paleoclimate studies show extreme climate variability, decades of severe drought punctuated by intense monsoon floods. These swings disrupted rice production and the delicate balance of Angkor's reservoirs. Geoarchaeological studies of the West Baray and surrounding sediments indicate reduced sediment input and erosion patterns consistent with widespread land use change and hydrological stress. In short, the hydraulic system that powered Angkor began to fail in parts. But climate is a trigger, not a full explanation. A complex society can often absorb environmental shocks if political and social responses are strong. In Angkor's case, those responses appear to have been inadequate or overwhelmed. Alongside environmental stress, political fragmentation and elite competition weakened central authority. Inscriptions and archaeological patterns point to decentralization, lesser elites, regional centers, and reduced central control of labor and land. The state's ability to organize massive labor pools, the very thing that built Angkor, eroded. Moreover, shifts in trade networks and the rise of maritime Southeast Asia changed economic incentives. Coastal ports and maritime trade routes grew in importance, moving wealth and influence away from the land-based core around Angkor. From the 14th century onward, the Khmer also faced military pressure. The emerging Siamese polity in Ayutthaya pressed westwards. In 1431, Angkor was sacked by Ayutthayan forces, a dramatic blow that coincided with the urban contraction and abandonment of Angkor's lowland core. While not the sole cause, these military blows accelerated what climate and political fragility had begun. Kings relocated capitals to safer or more manageable sites, further draining the old metropolis of authority and people. Modern scholarship resists a simple collapse narrative. New LiDAR data show a diverse, sprawling urban landscape. Paleoecology shows resilience and adaptation. Inscriptions show continuity in kingship and ritual. Rather than a sudden apocalypse, Angkor experienced reorganization. The center declined, populations shifted, political forms changed. The city was not obliterated so much as repurposed. This view reframes collapse as a process of transformation under multiple pressures: climate, hydrology, political fragmentation, economic reorientation, and external attack. Angkor's story matters because it is a case study of the limits and vulnerabilities of complex engineered societies. It teaches us about infrastructure dependency, environmental resilience, political legitimacy, and how technology and ideology combine to create, and sometimes dismantle, great states. The same questions face modern megacities today. And there's another legacy. Angkor's art, architecture, and religious imagination continue to shape Cambodian identity and pride. The stones remain, but the story is still being read and rewritten by archaeologists and historians using new tools. The Khmer Empire rose on rice, water, and devotion. It peaked in stone and scale, and it transformed rather than simply vanished. If you want to dig deeper, we'll link books and key papers in the description, including work by David Chandler, Charles Higham, Georges Cadiz, and the LiDAR and PNAS studies that reshaped our view of Angkor. If you like this journey into a vanished metropolis, hit like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who loves ancient engineering, epic temples, or the mysteries of history. Tell us in the comments, what part of Angkor's story surprised you most? Empires rise, empires fall, but the stones of Angkor still breathe. The Khmer Empire reminds us that greatness isn't just measured in conquest or monuments, but in what endures when the power fades. The art, the language, the belief that beauty could mirror the divine. For centuries, Angkor was the beating heart of Southeast Asia, a world where architecture sang in harmony with faith, and water flowed like time itself through the veins of an empire. Yet even the mightiest civilizations crumble when they lose balance between humanity and nature, ambition and humility. The echoes of the Khmer still reach us today, not in words but in rhythm, in the cultural pulse that carried across oceans and centuries. And speaking of rhythm, our next story dives deep into something you've heard all your life, but never truly listened to. In our next episode of the Histovian Tales, we explore how ancient music shaped modern songs, from Mesopotamian lyres to African drums, from temple chants to pop rhythms. History doesn't just live in ruins. It lives in our voices, our melodies, our hearts. So, if you love uncovering the echoes of our past that still move the present, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. New stories from the Histovian Tales drop regularly to keep your curiosity alive and your mind exploring.